who brought down America's largest chip giant. It's a drastic downturn. In 2021, it still made a net profit of $20 billion. From January to September this year, it suffered a huge loss of $18.6 billion. It carried out global layoffs affecting 15% of its workforce, and its total market value once fell below its book equity. As the largest chip company in the United States and one of the most critical military enterprises, Intel, after leading American hard technology for 50 years, has fallen to this state. Many people are bewildered, questioning how this could be possible when computers bought today still carry Intel chip labels. The issue is that the entire computer market has undergone a continuous decline over the past 7 years, essentially from 2011 to 2018, due to the rapid growth period of smartphone sales. Smartphones can be taken out of pockets for internet access, office work, and gaming, perfectly replacing most functions of computers. But, like computers, smartphones also need chips. From 2001 to 2006, the 5 years before the launch of the first-generation iPhone, was a critical period for mobile phone chip development. It is said that Apple initially approached Intel, hoping that Intel would supply chips for the iPhone. However, Intel considered that mobile phone chips must be small in size, low in power consumption, and not too inferior in performance, making the blueprints for computer chips unsuitable. Redesigning would be time-consuming. If Apple's phone didn't sell well, wouldn't it be a waste? Therefore, they declined. Rejected by Intel, Apple had no choice but to partner with others to form ARM Corporation, designing dedicated components for mobile phone chips. This set the standard for blueprint design, which Qualcomm and other chip design companies then used to create specific designs, while Samsung and other wafer foundries manufactured the chips. Even at this stage, Intel still had opportunities because it could both design chips and had wafer foundries with a larger scale than Qualcomm and Samsung at the time. If Intel had sought an ARM license, it likely would have obtained one. However, Intel did not take mobile phone chips seriously. Not until 2007, when the iPhone became a hit, did the shipment volume of ARM architecture mobile phone chips skyrocket from 2 billion units in 2006 to 10 billion units. Realizing its mistake, Intel launched its own mobile phone chip architecture item in 2008. However, in commercial competition, who scales up first gains cost advantages, makes more money, and can upgrade technologies faster, eventually locking in a leading position long-term. Unfortunately for Intel, ARM architecture mobile phone chips scaled up first. By 2016, Intel had accumulated losses of $4 billion in mobile phone chips and had to cut this business line. In 2023, global smartphone shipments reached 1.14 billion units, while personal computer shipments were only 240 million units. Qualcomm, seizing the opportunity in mobile phone chips, became the world's largest chip design company. Intel, missing the boat, dropped out of the top 10. Moreover, NVIDIA, now the world's largest semiconductor company by market value, mainly produces graphics cards and AI chips derived from them. Few know that in 2005, when NVIDIA was struggling in the graphics card market, some Intel executives proposed acquiring NVIDIA, seeing the future connection between graphics cards and AI. The proposal quickly reached Intel's board, but was rejected due to financial concerns raised by accountants about the impact on financial statements. Intel's late entry into graphics cards and AI chips meant it missed out on the AI market boom. Now, Intel's total market value is $107.3 billion, while NVIDIA's is $330 billion. Intel's third misstep involves the chip industry chain. At the pinnacle are those setting standards, such as ARM for mobile phone chips and Intel for PC chips. In the middle are chip design companies like Qualcomm and MediaTek, along with tool providers like ASML. At the base are wafer foundries, with TSMC leading and Samsung and others following. As one of the few full-chain chip companies globally, Intel has its own wafer foundry. However, Intel refused to use advanced lithography technology due to costs, opting for older technology instead. Consequently, Intel lagged behind in manufacturing processes. Competitors like AMD outsourced production to TSMC, gaining market share in PC chips. Even high-end clients like Apple stopped purchasing Intel chips, opting to design their own and outsource production. Facing these challenges, Intel decided to accept external orders for its foundry services, but struggled to attract clients due to process disadvantages. In 2023, Intel's foundry business lost $7 billion. Despite these major setbacks, Intel remains a cornerstone of America's efforts to revitalize high-end manufacturing. With $8.5 billion in subsidies, $11 billion in low-interest loans, and $3 billion in government procurement contracts, Intel plans to invest $100 billion to build or expand foundries in the U.S., aiming to become the world's second-largest chip foundry after TSMC. However, the road ahead will not be easy. Whether Intel can reach its goal remains to be seen. Who doused Europe's last hope in batteries? No industry has hurt European pride as much as the battery sector. Europeans were the first to champion green and environmental protection, but ironically, in the core lithium battery industry of green energy, 74% of the battery factories in Europe are owned by South Korean companies, 12% by Chinese companies, leaving only a meager 14% for European enterprises. More heart-wrenching is that even if all these factories operated at full capacity, they could only meet 45% of Europe's total battery demand, with the remainder needing to be imported, 64% from China and 23% from South Korea. Recognizing the importance of self-reliance, in 2017, the EU established the European Battery Alliance, determined to boost the local battery industry with an ambitious goal of achieving an annual output value of 250 billion euros. In 2023, the total size of the European battery market was just 23.3 billion euros, meaning they aim not only for self-sufficiency, but also to expand into other markets. To achieve this, leading European companies such as Volkswagen, BMW, Renault, Siemens, BASF, along with financial institutions like Goldman Sachs, joined forces to found Northvolt. Within 5 years, they invested $14.26 billion, more than the cumulative financing of the world's largest battery company, contemporary Amperex Technology Company, Limited Citel, over 13 years. Not only did they have ample funds, but orders poured in before the factory was even built. BMW alone pre-ordered 2 billion euros worth of batteries. Including orders from Volkswagen, Renault, Volvo, and others, Northvolt had a backlog of $55 billion, twice the annual total scale of the European battery market. With policy support, strong shareholders, sufficient orders, and mature lithium battery technology, especially since Tesla has open sourced its technology, all Northvolt needed to do was build and produce. However, problems arose when Northvolt set its sights on the global market and began building plants worldwide. 2 in Sweden, 1 each in Germany and Canada. Once fully operational, their total capacity would reach 230 GWh, ranking third globally after CATL and BYD, surpassing all South Korean companies. However, it took 5 years to get the first plant running, compared to 2 years in China. Moreover, 90% of raw materials and components had to be imported due to insufficient local supply. There was also a severe shortage of engineers, with an estimated gap of 800,000. As a result, Northvolt's production levels remained low, with utilization rates at only 0.5%. Major clients like BMW and Volvo waited impatiently, and BMW eventually redirected its €2 billion order to Samsung SDI. Compounding the issues, the U.S. introduced its own battery localization policies, offering subsidies totaling $400 billion, far exceeding Europe's efforts. This led many European and American companies in the battery supply chain to reduce capacity in Europe and shift to North America, exacerbating Northvolt's supply chain challenges. With no sales volume, Northvolt struggled financially, especially as construction costs piled up. Shareholders like Volkswagen Group, whose profits fell 33% in the first 9 months of the year, and Goldman Sachs, which wrote off its 19.6% stake in Northvolt, could not provide further funding. On October 21st, Northvolt officially filed for bankruptcy. Of the $14.26 billion invested, only $30 million remained, while debts amounted to $5.86 billion. Despite this, it's not entirely Northvolt's fault. Korean and Chinese companies investing in European battery factories face similar difficulties. For example, CATL's Hungarian factory also took over 5 years to start production, and its German factory has yet to turn a profit. Even domestic players like Svolt Energy Technology, ranked 7th in China, closed 2 German battery factories in late October. Clearly, in today's commercial competition, choosing the right environment is more important than effort. Northvolt had little choice but to operate in Europe. Regardless of success or failure, idealists always shine brightly. Who defeated German cars, the century-old brand, the first time it planned to close its domestic car factories, and close 3 at a time, thousands of employees facing layoffs, all employees facing salary cuts, even the old workers with more than 25 years of service, loyalty and dedication. Bonuses were suspended. German car workers who devoted their youth to the factory, furious, surrounded the headquarters of Volkswagen. But the crisis was not created overnight, nor did it belong to only one German automaker. From January to September 2024, Volkswagen's net profit fell by 33%, BMW fell by 35%, Mercedes-Benz fell by 31%. Compared to this, BYD's net profit rose by 18%, Chery soared by 80%, Geely skyrocketed by 358%. These 3 Chinese automakers not only did not reduce staff, but also increased support. Some factories have been short of people for a long time, but many people don't know that the main battlefields of the German trio and the Chinese trio are all in the Chinese auto market. From 2016 to 2022, the sales volume of the Chinese market accounted for 38% of Volkswagen's total sales. In 2023, it decreased to 35%, and in the first 9 months of 2024, it decreased to 31.5%. But it is still the largest single market. The share of Mercedes-Benz and BMW in China is slightly lower than that of Volkswagen. It is also the largest single market, and the decline trend is similar to that of Volkswagen. However, in the past 5 years, the Chinese auto market has been steadily growing. The problem lies in the fact that the share of German brands in the Chinese market continues to decline, from 24% in 2020 to 15.2% now. What caused this? This line is the proportion of new energy vehicle sales. Starting from 2020, it has soared from 5.4% to 53.3%. This coincides perfectly with the time when the share of German brands declined. But why didn't German brands sell well in new energy vehicles? In 2020, when new energy vehicles were about to rise, that year, the CEO of Volkswagen, Dias, recognized the importance of electrification, established a software company, CarRed, to create an operating system specifically for electric vehicles, and established an electric vehicle research team, wanting to grasp the upcoming windfall. But the success of oil cars became a shackles for electric cars. Volkswagen's electric vehicle engineers and designers almost all came from the oil car department. This approach makes sense from a financial and business perspective. After all, completely starting a new stall will increase costs. But from the market and technology perspective, it lays down a hidden danger. Because Tesla successfully set up a product benchmark, electric vehicles have already become 2 different species from fuel vehicles in terms of aesthetics and market logic. Electric vehicles are more like smartphones, such as technological products, compete for the speed of upgrading onboard apps. not exhaust roar and mechanical operation feeling, but the development personnel of Volkswagen's electric vehicles were all from the oil car department. They were too addicted to machinery. They couldn't switch their thinking. BMW and Mercedes-Benz also face similar situations. In the first 9 months of 2023, the sales of new energy vehicles accounted for less than 10% of the total sales of the 3 German brands, while among the 3 Chinese brands, BYD almost only sold new energy vehicles this year. Geely's share of new energy vehicles exceeded 50%. Weiche's share of new energy vehicles approached 30%. It is precisely because of this difference in product structure that the Chinese brand share has risen and the German brand share has declined. But the question is, Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz have a large number of joint venture factories in China, creating a lot of jobs. In a sense, they are not outsiders. If they really fall, they will also drag down China's economy. In the first 9 months of this year, the net profit of SAIC Group fell by 50%. The biggest reason was a decline in sales of joint ventures with Volkswagen. So how should German cars break through the situation? Just like cicadas shedding their skin can fly, they must shed the heavy skin of fuel cars before they can truly embrace new energy. Volkswagen closing German factories, reducing the number of fuel car workers. In fact, it's this way, but the resistance is too great. But there is another dose in China's traditional wisdom, which is to shed the shell of a golden cicada. I think we should set up a new group called the People's Electric Group in China, put all assets related to new energy into it, and completely separate from the old Volkswagen Group. But every year, you can pay a certain percentage of brand usage fees to the old Volkswagen Group. Do this for 10 or 8 years. If it really succeeds, then turn around and take over the old Volkswagen Group. Isn't that wonderful? Who harmed the largest chip giant in the United States? It's really a sharp decline. In 2021, it still earned $20 billion in net profit. From January to September this year, it lost $18.6 billion. Global layoffs reached 15%. The market value once fell below the book value. As the largest chip company in the United States and one of the core military enterprises, Intel, after leading the hard technology in the United States for more than 50 years, has fallen to such a state. Many people are directly confused. They say it doesn't make sense. Nowadays, when buying a computer, there are still Intel chip labels on them. But the problem lies in the fact that the entire computer market has just experienced a continuous shrinkage of 7 years. That is, the big pit from 2011 to 2018. Because these years are precisely the fastest growth period for smartphone sales. Smartphones can be taken out of your pocket and used for surfing the internet and playing games, perfectly replacing most functions of computers. But, like computers, smartphones also need chips. From 2001 to 2006, that is, before the first generation of Apple phones was launched, was the key period for the development of smartphone chips. It is said that at that time, Apple first found Intel, hoping that Intel could help Apple supply smartphone chips. But Intel thought about it. The head of the smartphone chip must be small, the power consumption must be low, and the performance cannot be too bad. My drawings of computer chips are definitely not suitable anymore. Drawing again will take a lot of effort. What if his Apple phone doesn't sell well? Won't I be wasting my time? Forget it. It's better to sell more computer chips and make more money. Finally, Apple was rejected with a closed door. It had to form an alliance with others to establish the ARM company, designing dedicated components for smartphone chips, equivalent to setting standards for drawing blueprints, and then licensing patents to let chip design companies like Qualcomm draw blueprints, and let Samsung and other wafer foundries produce chips. Even at this stage, Intel still had a chance, because it could both design chips and have its own wafer foundry, and the scale was larger than that of Qualcomm and Samsung at that time. If he wanted to get an ARM license, he could definitely get it. But at that time, he didn't even put the smartphone chip in his eyes. Until 2007, the Apple phone became popular, driving the shipment volume of ARM architecture smartphone chips from 200 million in 2006 to 1 billion in 2007. Intel only realized it and regretted slapping his thigh. He finally bit the bullet in 2008 and launched his own smartphone chip architecture item. But the problem is that the basic logic of commercial competition is who goes first, who has cost advantages, who can earn more money, and who can upgrade new technologies faster, ultimately locking in a long-term leading position. Intel's long-term leadership in computer chips is because it went first. Unfortunately, this time, it was the ARM architecture smartphone chip that went first, and it was bright. So Intel's smartphone chip was late. Step by step, by 2016, it had accumulated losses of $4 billion and had to cut off this business altogether. In 2023, the global shipment volume of smartphones reached 1.14 billion units. But the shipment volume of personal computers was only 240 million units. The one who seized the smartphone chip, Qualcomm, became the world's largest chip design company. The one who missed the opportunity, Intel, directly fell out of the top 10. But this is just the first blow to Intel. More unfortunately, now the world's largest chip company is NVIDIA, mainly producing graphics cards and AI chips derived from graphics cards. But many people don't know, in 2005, when NVIDIA was still struggling in the graphics card market, someone from Intel's management team suggested that the future of graphics cards is linked to artificial intelligence, and China should seize this opportunity, and by NVIDIA now. The proposal was quickly sent to the Intel board of directors, but the board called for an accountant who pointed out the risks, saying that acquiring a $20 billion valuation NVIDIA would make Intel's financial statements look bad for years to come. So the board rejected the proposal. One step late, and all steps are late. Intel's graphics cards and AI chips have not been developed until now, almost missing any benefits from the explosion of the AI market. Now Intel's total market value is $107.3 billion. NVIDIA's total market value is $330 billion. But this is just Intel's second place. The third place is even more humiliating. The chip industry chain is long. In short, it's like a pyramid. At the top are companies that set standards, such as AIM, which has established the AIM architecture for mobile phone chips. Intel has established the x86 architecture for personal computer chips. In the middle are chip design companies, such as Qualcomm, MediaTek, and some tool makers, such as ASML, which makes lithography machines. The bottom is wafer foundries, that is, specific manufacturers of chips. Among them, TSMC dominates alone. Samsung, Hynix, etc. are in the second echelon. As the only full-chain chip company in the world, almost, Intel also has its own wafer fabrication plant. But the problem lies in that, because Intel once refused to use advanced lithography technology due to cost concerns, it continued to use its old technology, resulting in being always one step behind other wafer fabrication plants in terms of process technology. When others were doing 7 nanometers, he just finished 10 nanometers. When others were doing 3 nanometers, he had just finished 7 nanometers. This caused even Intel's flagship product, PC chips, to gradually lose their leadership position in terms of process technology. On the contrary, main competitor AMD found the strongest TSMC as a contract manufacturer, and in the PC chip market, it has been catching up with Intel. Even Apple computers and other high-end customers no longer purchase Intel chips, but instead design their own chips and then outsource production to contract manufacturers. This is a home invasion. Intel finally turned around and decided to let its wafer fabrication plant take orders from outside, and start contract manufacturing business. But the same commercial logic applies. Who goes first will have a moat. TSMC, Samsung, and other wafer fabrication plants have already formed a stable and large customer base. Intel's process technology is not competitive at all. How can it compete with these people for customers? So after a lot of hard work, external customers are few and far between, but the wafer fabrication plant cannot be idle. So it outsourced 30% of its capacity to TSMC. This is like Mercedes-Benz renting its factory to BMW to produce cars. In 2023, Intel's wafer fabrication business lost $7 billion. But here comes the key point. Although there are three major setbacks above, Intel is still invincible because Intel is now one of the most important sparks for the U.S. to revive high-end manufacturing. With subsidies of $8.5 billion, low-interest loans of $11 billion, and a $3 billion government procurement contract, Intel plans to invest $100 billion in the United States to build or expand wafer fabrication plants, with the goal of becoming the second largest chip contract manufacturer in the world after TSMC. But this is definitely not an easy road to walk. Whether Intel can reach the finish line remains to be seen.